cavern was vast, its walls slick with an eerie, unearthly sheen that reflected the pale glow of the bioluminescent moss clinging to the stone. Each drip of water echoed endlessly, overlapping and reverberating until it felt like the cavern itself was breathing. Deep within, an ancient artifact sat perched on a pedestal of jagged rock, a mirror, cracked and tarnished, that seemed to drink in the dim light around it. Hannah, a seasoned spelunker, tightened her grip on the rope as she descended into the abyss. The stories of this place had always fascinated her. The Whispering Cavern, where every sound returned as a distorted echo. Legends spoke of those who ventured too far and never returned, lost not to the depths, but to the sound itself. As her boots touched the cavern floor, the echoes of her landing ricocheted around her, warping and twisting until they no longer resembled her movements. She turned to her partner, Kyle, who was still securing his descent. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice steady but tinged with unease. Kyle nodded, his face pale. "It's just the echoes. They're strange here." But Hannah wasn't convinced. Something about the way the echoes lingered felt wrong, as if they carried a voice not her own. She took a step forward, and the sound of her boot crunching against the stone returned a second later, louder, deeper, and undeniably malevolent. She fought. Anna Morgan had always been drawn to the mysteries of the earth. As a child, she would spend hours exploring the forests near her home, imagining what lay hidden beneath the surface. Her curiosity eventually led her to a career in spelunking, where she made a name for herself uncovering some of the most remote and untouched caves in the world. For Hannah, the subterranean world was a sanctuary, a place where the noise of the surface faded away, and all that remained was the hum of the earth itself. Kyle, her longtime partner in exploration, was her opposite in many ways. Where she was methodical and cautious, he was impulsive and daring. Yet their differences made them an effective team. They had shared countless adventures, each more thrilling and dangerous than the last. But the Whispering Cavern was different. This wasn't just another cave to map or a challenge to conquer. This was a place steeped in myth and fear, a place where reality seemed to unravel. Local legends spoke of the cavern as a portal to another realm, a liminal space where sound became something tangible and dangerous. The villagers' warnings had been clear: stay out. Once the echoes take hold, they never let go. But Hannah and Kyle had dismissed the tales as superstitions, relics of a bygone era. Now, standing in the heart of the cavern, Hannah couldn't shake the feeling that they had made a mistake. The air was thick, oppressive, as if the cavern itself was watching them. Hannah's flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating the jagged walls and the strange, shifting patterns of the moss. Every sound they made, every breath, every step, returned to them altered, distorted. It was as if the echoes had a life of their own, mocking and mimicking their every move. At the same time, she felt something with her, as if the danger she faced was real. As they moved deeper into the cavern, the artifact came into view. The mirror, though cracked and tarnished, exuded an aura of power. Hannah felt an inexplicable pull toward it, a compulsion to reach out and touch its surface. Kyle, ever the skeptic, dismissed it as an old relic, probably left behind by ancient inhabitants. "It's just a piece of junk," he said, shrugging, "but if it makes for a good story, let's take a closer look." Hannah hesitated. Something about the mirror felt wrong, as if it was watching them. She shook off the feeling and followed Kyle toward the pedestal. As they approached, the echoes grew louder, more insistent. The distorted sound seemed to form words, fragmented and unintelligible, yet filled with a sense of urgency. "Do you hear that?" Hannah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kyle nodded, his expression tense. "Yeah, it's like it's trying to say something." Hannah reached out to touch the mirror, her fingers trembling. The moment her skin made contact, a wave of cold shot through her body and the cavern erupted in sound. The echoes became deafening, a cacophony of voices screaming, laughing, crying. The moss on the walls pulsed with light, and the ground beneath them seemed to shift and quake. The echoes grew stronger with each passing moment, their distorted whispers now forming coherent words. "Stay," they said, over and over again. "Stay with us. Stay for us." Hannah and Kyle backed away from the mirror, their flashlights flickering as if the cavern itself was draining the light. The air grew colder, and the walls seemed to close in, the bioluminescent moss casting eerie shadows that danced like specters. "We need to get out of here," Kyle said, his voice shaking. But as they turned to leave, the path they had come from was gone, replaced by an unbroken wall of stone. Panic set in. Hannah's breathing quickened as she scanned the cavern for an exit. The echoes continued, their voices growing louder, more insistent. "Stay," they repeated, now accompanied by a low rhythmic hum that seemed to resonate in her chest. "This isn't possible," Kyle muttered, running his hands over the wall. "We came this way. There has to be a way out." But there wasn't. The cavern had changed, reshaping itself as if it were alive. The only path forward led deeper into the darkness, toward the source of the echoes. "We don't have a choice," Hannah said, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her. "We have to keep moving." Reluctantly, Kyle nodded, and they began their descent into the unknown. The echoes followed them, growing louder with each step. The rhythmic hum became a pulse, a heartbeat that seemed to synchronize with their own. The air grew colder, and the light from their flashlights barely penetrated the thick darkness. They came across strange carvings on the walls, symbols that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. The moss glowed brighter here, illuminating the carvings with an unnatural light. Hannah reached out to touch one of the symbols, and a shock of pain shot through her hand. "Don't touch anything," Kyle warned, pulling her back. "This place it's not natural." As they pressed on, the echoes began to take on a more human quality. They no longer sounded like disembodied whispers, but like voices. Real, tangible voices. Hannah recognized some of them. Her mother, her childhood friend, even her own voice. Each one called out to her, begging her to turn back, to stay, to listen. Kyle seemed unaffected, his focus solely on finding a way out. But Hannah felt herself drawn to the voices, their pleas tugging at her heart. She stopped, her flashlight trembling in her hand. "Hannah, what are you doing?" Kyle asked, his tone sharp. Kyle put his arms out. "I can hear them," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're calling to me." "Ignore it," he said firmly. "It's not real. None of this is real." Exercise can improve your mood, but it felt real. Too real. The echoes were no longer just sounds. They were memories, emotions, fragments of a life she thought she had left behind. She felt herself drawn to them, her feet moving of their own accord. The library was quiet, as people took time to recover from the shock. But it felt real, too real for dreams. The library was crowded with people moving of their own accord. She felt herself drawn to the library, afraid to close the door. Afraid to close the door. She tried to close the door. Kyle grabbed her arm, pulling her back. "Snap out of it, Hannah. We need to keep moving." Reluctantly, she nodded, and they continued their journey. The echoes grew quieter, but the feeling of being watched remained. The rhythmic pulse grew stronger, resonating through the cavern like a drumbeat. And then they saw it. A door. It was massive, carved from the same stone as the cavern, but glowing with an inner light. The symbols on its surface pulsed in time with the echoes, and the air around it seemed to vibrate with energy. End of Chapter 6. Recording by Trev Moore. "What is that?" Kyle asked, his voice filled with awe and fear. Hannah didn't answer. She felt a pull toward the door, a compulsion she couldn't resist. She reached out, her hand trembling as it touched the surface. The door began to open and the echoes erupted into a deafening roar. As the door swung open, an otherworldly light spilled into the cavern, illuminating the space in a kaleidoscope of colors. The echoes, once chaotic and dissonant, harmonized into a haunting melody. Beyond the door was a vast expanse, an infinite void where fragments of memories floated like glowing embers. Hannah and Kyle stood at the threshold, their faces bathed in the surreal glow. Hannah felt a pull, stronger than before. It wasn't just the echoes, it was the very fabric of the space beyond, calling to her, promising answers, solace, and truth. She turned to Kyle, whose expression was a mix of awe and terror. "We can't go in there," he said firmly. "We don't know what it is." Hannah's gaze remained fixed on the void. "I think this is what we've been looking for," she said softly. "What if it's the source of everything? The echoes, the voices, everything." "Or it's a trap," Kyle countered. "Look around, Hannah. This place isn't natural. It's alive." Before Kyle could stop her, Hannah stepped through the door. The moment her foot crossed the threshold, the world around her shifted. She found herself suspended in the void, weightless, surrounded by fragments of her own memories. She saw herself as a child playing in the forest, as a teenager discovering her love for caves, as an adult exploring the unknown. Each memory played out like a scene, vivid and tangible. The echoes were no longer just sounds, they were voices, each one tied to a memory. They spoke to her, guiding her deeper into the void. Hannah felt an overwhelming sense of clarity, as if she was piecing together a puzzle she hadn't realized existed. Kyle's voice broke through the trance. "Hannah, come back," he called from the doorway. "It's not safe." But Hannah couldn't turn back. The pull was too strong. She moved deeper into the void, the fragments of her memories coalescing into a single overwhelming truth. The echoes weren't just sounds. They were the remnants of lives, voices trapped between worlds. And now, they wanted her to join them. "Stay with us," the voices whispered. "You belong here." One German cemetery inspector laughed as the girls carried on south. Hannah hesitated. The void was comforting, alluring. But then she thought of Kyle, standing at the doorway, and the life she'd fought so hard to build. She couldn't abandon it. Gathering her strength, she turned and began to fight her way back to the door. The void resisted, its pull growing stronger with each step. The echoes grew louder, their voices pleading, demanding. But Hannah pushed forward, her determination unwavering. Finally, she reached the threshold, where Kyle's outstretched hand waited for her. With a final burst of effort, she grabbed his hand and crossed back into the cavern. The doors slammed shut behind her, and the echoes fell silent. The cavern was still. The oppressive weight of the echoes was gone, replaced by an almost eerie silence. Hannah and Kyle stood in the dim light of their flashlights, their breathing heavy, their hearts racing. "What just happened?" Kyle asked, his voice trembling. Hannah shook her head, still trying to process what she had experienced. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I think we found the source of the echoes, and whatever it was, it wanted to keep us there." Kyle glanced at the now sealed door, its glowing symbols dimmed. "We need to get out of here," he said, "before this place changes again." Anna nodded, and together they retraced their steps, the path out of the cavern miraculously restored. The oppressive feeling of being watched was gone, and the echoes no longer followed them. The bioluminescent moss cast a gentle glow, guiding their way. As they climbed back to the surface, Hannah couldn't help but feel a sense of loss. The void had shown her things she had long forgotten, fragments of herself she hadn't realized she was missing. But she also felt a renewed sense of purpose, a determination to uncover the mysteries of the world and herself, without losing sight of what truly mattered. When they finally emerged into the light of day, the warmth of the sun was a welcome relief. Hannah and Kyle collapsed onto the grass, their laughter tinged with both exhaustion and relief. "We're never doing that again," Kyle said, his tone half joking. Hannah smiled, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Never say never," she replied. As they packed up their gear, Hannah cast one last glance at the cavern's entrance, a faint echo drifting on the wind, as if to remind her that some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved.